The end of the second round of talks in Geneva on February the 15th saw a stalemate between the government and opposition forces, and many commentators are discussing the potential Balkanization or split of Syria and other countries in the wider Middle East. Let's see what the press has to say on this subject. British correspondent Richard Boyers writes in The Times, failing states such as Syria deserve to fail, in which he argues there is so much hatred inside some national borders that divorce can be the only solution. The issue of unnatural Middle East borders, drawn up during the colonial era, has been a recurrent theme in media analyses of Syria. Boyers writes the dismantling of the country may now produce the best or least bad outcome for its people and the region. Sometimes failing states have to be allowed to fall apart, struggling to keep them intact, as with post-Tito Yugoslavia, merely stokes ancient hatreds. Boyers does not believe the Assad family can be a part of Syria's future and refers to the country as a husk of a nation state. There is no grand mobilising idea behind the survival of the Assad clan. Referring to what is seen by some post-colonial critics as an outdated term, he writes, indeed, that Eurocentric label Middle East should be dropped. It is too suggestive of an inbuilt conflict between Arab and Jew. Instead, what is emerging on the ground is a sense that the Eastern Mediterranean has common historical and trading interests that go beyond the sectarian divide. Boyers writes, if Syria fragments, and the signs are that it will be a three-way split between regime-held territory in the Alawite heartland, Sunni strongholds in the south and the Kurds in the northeast, Syria need not fall off the map into some horrific black hole when the killing abates. It can find itself back on the map, he said. He concludes parts of Syria are becoming playgrounds for warlords. That's why Syria, left to decompose at its present pace, is dangerous not only to itself but well beyond the region. And Russia Today features an opinion piece that says US and EU are neck deep in plans to see pro-Western regime change in Ukraine. Anti-war activist Brian Becker says there is a very far-right fascist and semi-fascist force that is opting for violence and really armed struggle to overthrow the government as a tactic to integrate Ukraine into the EU and into the Western powers. The US and NATO and the EU together are using their combined forces to signal to these demonstrators that we are with you. He added, the hypocrisy here is dripping. I mean, the United States government has no right when they foment opposition, arm opposition groups from Syria to Libya and now the Ukraine, and then say when a government responds to it, see, you're violating people's constitutional rights or free speech rights. That's just a propaganda game, he said. The EU triggered this whole protest movement. They signalled their pro-European forces inside Ukraine when they gave an ultimatum to the Ukrainian government back in November. They want to bring it over into the camp of the American government, which has expansionist designs. They want to encircle Russia in order to conquer what was formerly an independent part of the world, Becker said. Becker added the Ukrainian upper class being courted by Western powers have nothing in common with the Ukrainians, who are poor and who have been suffering for the last 20 years. There's a class divide in addition to a geographic divide. Becker concludes the US should stop fomenting civil war, as they did in the case of Syria, for instance, or Libya. We're now joined by Duncan Gardham, security correspondent for The Times and Telegraph and specialist in counter-terrorism. Thank you for joining us, Duncan.
You're welcome.
First question. Some analysts are now saying a breakdown of borders in the Middle East wouldn't necessarily constitute a security threat, but rather could lead to a new dawn for these countries. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think that the general movement to relax border restrictions could definitely bring benefits to various Middle Eastern countries. But I also think it's fairly unlikely in the current state of play.
And many parties in the Middle East and Russia see Western interference as a negative thing. Is the indecision by Western powers over what to do, especially with Syria, doing more harm than good?
The Western indecision has definitely been problematic. I think had the West become involved in the battle a little bit earlier and taken some more decisive action, it could have come to an end by now. But we are where we are, and the Western governments have been responding to the opinions of their people, of their electorates, who are war weary after spending so long fighting wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And although the Syrian situation is very different, and they could have become involved in it, I think that they felt they had no choice but to sit back. And now we are in a messy situation, and it's clear that the Assad government don't really want to get involved in real negotiations, and as a result, it looks like the rebels are going to have to fight on. And the only question really on the road to peace is whether the rebels might be able to unite more and in doing so become more effective and perhaps force Assad back to the negotiating table.
But you said you don't think that there will be a breakdown of borders. Do you think this is because the West won't allow that to happen, or it's just the powers that be in the Middle East won't allow it?
I think the second. I think the powers in the Middle East, I think people by their nature become quite nationalistic and have a national identity, and that the lowering of borders across the Middle East would tend to dilute that national identity. And although it might be a good thing in the long run, I think it's unlikely to happen anytime soon.
Thanks for joining us, Duncan.
You're welcome.
Bye. For more updates, please visit levant.tv. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.